Hey guys, Frankie Star here. Today we're going to be doing some reacts, and the first one today is making the original old fashioned. Now I'm not much of a drinker myself, but I do like whiskey mixed drinks, namely old fashions and whiskey sours. So I'm actually really interested in this. I also have some other good ones we're going to see, but let's get right to it, eh?
One of the most popular cocktails today has to be the old-fashioned. But I ask you, is the old-fashioned actually old-fashioned? Well, I am going to make two 19th century versions of the cocktail to determine just how the original old-fashioned should taste. So thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video as we make the real old-fashioned,
despite being called old-fashioned, was it like relatively younger, like 20s? Or am I thinking of the Manhattan?
So today I'm going to be making two versions of this cocktail so I can show you a little bit of the evolution of the old-fashioned. I know what you're wondering, Max, why aren't you at your bar? You have a whole
McVie, it's you!
Bar setup you could film this in.
It's our Brit boy. That's a Pikachu.
It is absolutely covered in stuff, books and glassware and everything. Ooh. And I determined that it is too hot in my house for me to clear it off.
I've been doing some drinking history.
And anyway, we're going to start the history of the old-fashioned with the history of the cocktail, because that's what an old-fashioned is.
I do know his
it's just short for old-fashioned cocktail.
His husband or
See,
boyfriend?
cocktail seems to have emerged
it's
in the
late
Pokemon
18th century.
And back then, it wasn't the cocktail or a cocktail. It was just cocktail. You had a glass of cocktail. And there are numerous mentions in
I think he's going to bring it up. But just for a quick rundown, cocktails are called that because they used to mix spices and peppers to make to put up a horse's butt to make them like more energetic or whatever, so they could sell them. And that because of the way the tail raised from it, they call them they raise it like a cocktail. And eventually, once mixed drinks became a lot more popular, they also use similar ingredients, so they started calling those cocktails. That's kind of how it got its name.
Documents from the late 18th and early 19th century, but in 1806 we get a definition when a reader of the political paper Hudson Balance and Columbian Repository asked what that drink was after it had been mentioned in an article. And the editor, Harry Croswell, responded saying, "Cocktail, then, is a stimulating liquor composed of spirits of any kind, sugar, water, and bitters." Not very specific, but that's really what it was for the first half of the 19th century. The only real variation was what liquor was going to be in it, because you could have
I wonder what the first cocktail was,
or rum cocktail, brandy cocktail, or whiskey cocktail. And if it was whiskey cocktail, it probably wouldn't be bourbon. Bourbon was around, but it wasn't very popular. The whiskey to have in 19th century America
good old rye whiskey.
So that is what I'm going to be using as I make this first original cocktail. So take a small piece of sugar and set it in a cocktail glass. Now you'll notice that this is not an old-fashioned glass like we think of today, a rocks glass. This is the old-fashioned cocktail glass, which was more like a small wine glass of sorts. And it would actually eventually become the martini glass. Then add a few drops of bitters on the sugar. You want enough that the sugar will fully absorb it. Now, the bitters used at the time were called Stoughton's bitters, and they date back to 1690. Unfortunately, they stopped being made in the late 19th century, so we're going to have to go with something else.
What exactly are bitters anyway?
Or Angostura bitters, or Peychaud's.
I'm always wondering about that.
All of those were around about 20 years after this mention of the cocktail, so I'm going to use Peychaud's. Then you want to muddle up that bitter-soaked sugar, and then all we do is add the water and the whiskey. I'm using Whistle Pig rye. It's similar to something that they would have had at the time, but the quantity is the question.
Yeah, I like fruity cocktail. I'm not a big drinker.
You have to look to a slightly later definition from 1833.
Gin and lemonade.
Here, Captain J.E. Alexander says to use 1/3 of the spirit to 2/3 of the water. Add bitters and enrich with sugar and nutmeg. They put nutmeg on absolutely everything back then. If you watch Townsend's, you would absolutely know that. Also, I think it's kind of a weird way to tell us how much water and liquor to use. 1/3 spirit and then 2/3 water. Just kind of an odd way. And in his book,
just like 1 part to 2
which is
parts,
like
right?
the Bible of cocktails, David Wondrich said that this is probably about 2 ounces of whiskey or whatever spirit you want to use to 3 ounces of water. Then we're going to give that a stir to let the sugar dissolve as well as it can, and then, per Captain Alexander's suggestion, we will put a scrape of nutmeg on the top.
Doesn't really look like a cocktail,
how is this different from a modern old-fashioned? Well, first of all, the glass. Second of all, no ice, so it's going to be room temperature. And at this time, pretty much everything was drunk either room temperature or warm. There was ice sold,
I do
but it
know,
was very expensive and very hard to come by until commercial ice became available.
They would drink champagne out of like those bowl-shaped
ones. But at a saloon, they didn't really have it for quite some time.
And
we'll get to that.
it was because they didn't like the bubbliness. They made a cup.
You'll notice
to have the champagne be less bubbly.
So dark. Part of that's the Peychaud's. They're not as dark as the Angostura bitters, but also there's just a lot more water in here because you don't add water typically to a old-fashioned today, other than the ice. Anyway,
it doesn't really look like a cocktail.
Let's give it a try.
And then
the
you
nutmeg,
recognize.
obviously, very different.
Particularly whiskey cocktails, at least from my experience, aren't like that color at all.
Actually, that was really good.
I mean, it's sugar, bitters, nutmeg, water,
nutmeg on
and a little bit
guys.
of alcohol.
It's
I love champagne
enough
though.
That it,
Champagne's nice and sweet enough.
Adds just a different depth of flavor. Also, I like rye whiskey. I do like rye whiskey. It's a little more earthy. I don't know. Like hay, kind of a hay flavor, wet straw instead of bourbon. Bourbon's fine too, but and you can use either one.
A rye whiskey sour is really
like
good
that.
though.
It's not too sweet. You know, some of the sugar is still at the bottom, and we'll get to what that.
They had like a thing made up like for each of the bride and groom's favorite cocktails.
Old-fashioned before it
his
got all
whiskey sour, so I had tried his and loved it.
Ice. But we will be using ice in the next version of the cocktail. But before we get to that, I think it's time for some history.
History! I'm getting attacked by degenerates with my mouse. Oh. I wanted to play FF14.
It's the middle of the 19th century, and saloons are booming all over America, and bartenders are still making the same drinks that they've been preparing for the last 100 years. Mostly eggnogs, flips,
unlimited
juleps,
champagne,
mulled wines, toddies, cobblers, and punches.
You got
These
all
are the kinds of drinks that make up the first bartender's guide, written in 1862 by Jerry Thomas. I mean, when you think of a 19th century saloon, you don't typically think eggnog, but Thomas has a whole section of different eggnogs. He also has a huge section on different punches. Cobblers have a section, juleps have a section.
At least from my experience, you don't see
a small section to
like cobblers and toddies
in his words,
like the only julep you ever hear is like mint julep, and that's it.
And is generally used on fishing and other sporting parties. Although some patients insist that it is good in the morning as a tonic. That's actually when this would be drunk. This would be drunk in the morning when you woke up. You know, instead of like before dinner or something. So times have changed. Anyway, Thomas's brandy, whiskey, and gin cocktails are not all that different from the one made a half century before, except that instead of sugar, he uses definitely not syrup, and instead of water, he uses ice, a relatively new
it was just like just a quick aside. In Canada, if you want to get liquor or beer, for the most part, you have to go to dedicated stores. Nowadays, you can buy beer pretty much anywhere. Like you can buy at Walmart now. But you want actual liquor, you have to go through one of the liquor control boards. So for here in Ontario, it's the LCBO, Liquor Control Board of Ontario. It's basically just a liquor store where you can get your I think you can get wines elsewhere, but like your harder liquors like vodka, whiskeys, and all that, you can get there. And the beer stores, what are they called? Beer store, are kind of being taken aback because you can buy beer pretty much anywhere. It's weird because Canada, obviously, one of the jokes is a huge alcohol consumption, especially a beer. So it's a big transition because I know a lot of people like, especially, you could take your old bottles and cans back for like a little bit of a rebate for recycling. Plus, you can just take that off your next, like you buy another case for cheaper. Which I know, like a lot of people, like my family, are complaining that they might not be able to do that if all the beer stores close down.
Product available in saloons of the time. But even though it's made with ice, there is no ice in the drink when it's served. He has you strain out the ice and then serve it in, he says, a wine glass, but it would have been a glass similar to this. Then Thomas also includes recipes.
I'm assuming at the time it was probably for make it look like they're more trying to water down the drink.
A little extra something in for flavor.
Japanese
One might
cocktail.
have a lemon peel. Another has a dash of curacao. Another a little bit of absinthe.
Was it like
after
sake?
He publishes his recipe, other bartenders start publishing theirs for what they call improved cocktails. And these really ramp up the amount of these foreign liquors. Things like absinthe and orgeat and curacao.
I think anything above a certain amount of alcohol has to be through the
which had come to America in the 1850s.
Here, like through the LCBO.
And it started to become popular in its own right by the 1860s.
And they loosened up their restrictions on non-dedicated beer stores from selling beer.
Cocktail, sometimes
wine.
That it was half vermouth, half whatever spirit, and this is where you get the original.
But you might see like a dedicated wine
like
store within a store.
But while these cocktails did become more and more,
it's like independent grocers. A lot of time you might see a, or it's called back. It's also called backstrims in places. Independents or backstrims. They'll have like a little store inside the store that just sells wine. It's where I got a challenge where if you look older than 25, then you wouldn't get ID. Yeah, I think that's like for a lot of places. If you look old enough, they're not even going to bother. Or it depends, right? What the policy is or how lax they are with it. I think you're supposed to ID everybody, but like if you meet like an old guy, clearly he's not a kid.
Popular, there were those who scoffed. Damn kids with their newfangled cocktails. I want something old-fashioned. Now, it's not clear who the first old codger was to order this old-fashioned at a bar. We will never know. A lot of people take credit for it. There are hotels that say that they were the first one to make it, and it's all bunk, because it was definitely around by 1880 when it appeared for the first time in writing that we know of in the Chicago Daily Tribune. And before long, it was becoming the new fashionable way to drink cocktails. In 1886,
like hipsters,
Leander Richardson wrote that the modern
cocktails before they were cool.
So complex a beverage that people are beginning to desert it in favor of old-fashioned cocktails. In the regular line of drinks coming under this name, every bartender seems to have established his own private brand, so that people who are in the habit of whetting their appetites by the use of the friendly cocktail never know beforehand what they are going to take into their stomachs as they pass
that makes
from
sense because the old-fashioned cocktails
cocktail, on the contrary,
were so simple.
Everywhere,
just do a little bit of change and then it's your own
a little sugar,
old-fashioned.
A little bitters, a lump of ice, a piece of twisted lemon peel, and a good deal of whiskey. It has no absinthe, no chartreuse, and no other flavoring extract injected into it.
So I'm writing an essay on cats. Cats in art history.
AI.
I'm an art history major.
But even that is not really an old-fashioned because it now has ice and lemon peel. So I guess you could say that the old-fashioned of the 1880s was actually a new-fashioned old-fashioned.
Well, that's how it is with hipster trends,
I would like to say that that's the end of it. That is the drink that you would get today when you go into a bar.
Like,
and it kind of is.
what are they called? You play records on
another
record
100
player.
years of evolution that this cocktail needs to go through first. See,
they're probably better now than they were before
nature
using modern technology.
Tinkerers. And so they always wanted to put their own spin on this drink, even though it was supposed to be pretty simple, just the old-fashioned. So already, by the time that we get the first printed recipe for something called an old-fashioned, that would be in the 1888 edition of Bartender's Manual by Theodore Prue, the old-fashioned has already morphed into something else because his recipe has syrup and absinthe. There are many recipes for old-fashions that appear in the next decades that are the simple kind, but there are just as many that have other liquors added in and more often different types of fruit. It started with lemon, then orange rind, and then whole slices of orange, and then cherries. And by 1917, people are also adding pineapple. According to many, what really did the old-fashioned in, though, was the poor quality of liquor during Prohibition.
Yeah, that makes sense.
In 1938, Westbrook Pegler
Old-fashioned are pretty
lamented
simple.
about that
You're not really
strange
hiding
affectation cultivated in the time of Prohibition to stifle the taste
replacing
of the liquor,
the taste of the
called
alcohol.
the old-fashioned cocktail.
So if you're
A
just like
fruit
drinking
salad
shitty alcohol,
dunked in rye
then yeah, it
and
makes
crowned
sense.
with a sprig of turnip greens. Through the 40s, 50s, and 60s, lots of recipes appear. Some are the classic, and a lot of them, most of them, have some fruit. Sometimes so much that they are, like he said, kind of a fruit cocktail. And then...
Yeah, if you don't know, in Canada, one of the iconic cocktails we have is called the Caesar, which is like a Bloody Mary, but it's Clamato juice, Worcestershire sauce, Clamato juice, Worcestershire sauce. I think hot sauce, or that could be an optional thing. Then it's spread with like a special Caesar salt seasoning. And usually it comes with a stalk of celery. But lately, or not lately, it's been for a long time, you see people start adding like, oh, we're gonna put a grilled cheese on top, or we're gonna put on a whole fucking. I think it started like shrimp. You put shrimp on the side, like hanging on the rim. But then people are like, oh yeah, I want to put a grilled cheese or a burger or a whole fucking put sin on top, and it became like we're gonna see how much food we can fit on top of a cocktail, Caesar glass, like a big glass, and fucking make a mountain of it. And it kind of ruins it because like I think the earliest bits were being like adding bacon instead of the celery stalk to it. But then people kept trying to one up it. Oh, we're not shrimp or this grilled cheese or a burger. Messes with it. There's also kind of something called the red eye, which is just beer and Clamato juice. Granny Star likes to drink those a lot. She likes her red eyes or anything with Clamato juice, really, alcohol-wise.
They just kind of disappear. In the 70s and 80s, vodka and gin came in and became the more popular liquor to drink, and so whiskey drinks, including the old-fashioned,
gin and
started to
tonic,
be seen
gin and juice, gin and lemonade,
old-fashioned. Of course,
vodka
now the drink has made a
Moscow
comeback. They're more
Mule.
popular than ever, as is whiskey, including rye. Rye has really made a resurgence
I wonder
in
when
the last 20 years or so.
The resurgence happened. Was it during the hipster era?
When you do go to a bar,
the 2010s when the old-fashioned started coming back?
You're going to get something similar to what they were making at the end of the 19th century, like this recipe from 1895. Dissolve a small lump of sugar with a little water in a whiskey glass. Add 2 dashes Angostura bitters, a small piece ice, a piece lemon peel, 1 jigger whiskey. Mix with a small bar spoon and serve, leaving spoon in the glass. So just like our early 19th century version, this one does start off with a lump of sugar.
That makes me wonder, because like absinthe is also a thing like that, when you dissolve it with, you dissolve the sugar with water.
And I'm not entirely sure why that is. I'm only guessing that once we
I guess it's an old-timey way of making mixed drinks.
Cold, it's going to be even harder to dissolve that sugar in it. Another difference is that instead of the original cocktail glass, the wine glass kind of thing, this does call for a whiskey glass, but it's not like the kind that you use for whiskey tastings. This type of whiskey glass was essentially a small rocks glass like we use today. Then we add 2 dashes of Angostura bitters and a small piece of ice. But exactly how big is a small piece of ice? Because even in that one decade, in the 1890s, people were arguing about how much ice to add to this drink. One description from 1890 says that a piece of ice is big
something
as a
so
thumbnail
simple. It's very hard. There's so much room.
Lemon peel. The drinker then
for you
pours
kind of
his
interpret
stint
things,
of rye
right?
whiskey into the glass and works his elbow. By the way, that is how it used to be done. The person ordering the drink would pour their own whiskey in, and I can't imagine any bar today letting you do that.
No, yeah, look, I
Anyway,
can't think of the overhead
so
on that,
that's
right?
one description, saying a thumbnail-sized piece of ice, basically a chip of ice. But then another description from 1899 says, have lump ice about the size of an egg, but cut square or diamond shape, as this tends to improve the appearance very much in serving. Now this still isn't nearly as big as those massive cubes, the modern cubes that are like clear and everything that you'll get at nice bars.
Like those giant ass
but it is
balls of
more
ice they
than
put
a
in the
chip of
drinks.
ice, so I am going
Especially
with
like
something
the Japanese
kind
bars
of
you
the
see.
size of a small egg, I guess. So add the ice in, and then make a piece of lemon peel and squeeze it over the top and drop it in, and then a jigger, which at this time was 1.5 ounces of whiskey. Give it a nice stir, and he says to actually serve it with the spoon. And remember when I said I would tell you what happened to the sugar at the bottom? This is what happens. They would leave a spoon either in the glass or next to it, and they would be special old-fashioned spoons. They were called old-fashioned spoons. You could buy them. And then when you were done with the cocktail, you would spoon out the sugar that hadn't dissolved and just eat it as a little sweet treat at the end. So I tasted the early 19th century, and now it is time for the late 19th century, which I think is closer to the modern version.
Thank God they're quick. I hate having them skippable, because I actually have to video edit. And God forbid I actually do more work than I have to.
It's good. It's a lot stronger than this one.
Yeah, it seems like it.
You can see why, just in the color. This one had a lot of water in it. This one has pretty much none, just a little bit of the ice, which is starting to melt, and it'll be completely gone in a few seconds because it's friggin' hot in here. Also, the orange peel is adds a very different layer than the nutmeg. I kind of like the nutmeg. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's an exciting flavor to add to whiskey, and it just kind of, I don't know, it complements. They're both kind of warm.
Sorry, I'm yelling a little bit here.
Going together.
Have some chalky milk.
I also feel like this is not as sweet. I feel like maybe the sugar didn't dissolve as well, except
it's dissolved, but I don't think it's mixed well because it's all at the bottom.
There at the bottom. So yeah, that's what people would use this spoon. I mean, I won't finish it right now in front of you. Okay, well that's not really working. Anyway, they'd eat the sugar after they finish the cocktail.
Yeah.
Now there are other versions of the old-fashioned because there was
I think now you probably mix the water, sugar, and all that into the shaker.
And the rum old-fashioned and the brandy old-fashioned. In fact, today, I think even now, if you go to Wisconsin and you order an old-fashioned, you'll often get brandy instead of whiskey. But I think if you went into a bar pretty much anywhere else and you ordered either a brandy or a gin
down the stairs getting chalky milk,
like it was your first time ordering.
Ain't no one touching my chalky milk but me.
These are two very delicious, very simple recipes, and so they're both worth making just to kind of see the difference and see how a cocktail evolved over about 100 years.
Kept alcohol
and
on
I will
me,
make sure to put
like
the
special
recipes,
occasions,
as always, up on my website,
but I would definitely try it.
tastinghistory.com, a website that I built with today's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is the easiest all-in-one platform to build a website.
Well, I'm going to let him do his sponsor.
You don't need to be a web designer to use it. I'm not a web designer. I don't know anything about design in general. And yet I was able to build a website. It's so easy. They start you off with professionally designed templates, but then you get to use their intuitive tools like drag and drop editing to customize the website to really make it yours. They also have a wonderful suite of business tools, whether you offer products or services. You can do scheduling and sales and inventory and shipping, all of it. So if you're thinking of building a website, head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and
some other one that you can do like student stuff. And I'm a contact our
tasting history, and you will get 10%
teacher
off
got us to
of your first
we're able to make a free account, and it was waiting for us to post our pictures and that for contact.
On Drinking History.
Hey, I always love dealing with Max. It's always a joy. And if you like this, give it a like, give me a like, subscribe, and, comment what your favorite drink is. I'd like to know. And you guys, keep it cool, and bye.